That's not the one I want. It is. Okay. Alright guys, what I'm going to do, just so you're aware, is this is so that Hein can respond to exactly what was said by Simon Roche in the live stream last week. And Philippe, who's sitting on Simon's left as we look at them, it was not involved in any way in this part of the discussion. He's a doctor and he was there to talk about the coronavirus, but we were talking about big groups collaborating, and this was the response that Simon gave. So I'm just going to play that now, and then I'm going to get Hein back again to respond to this. This is again just looking a bit further ahead. The ANC government are such a complete disaster anyway. There won't be a government in South Africa. It'll just be complete chaos. Isn't that a time for the bigger groups like Saitlanders, like Boer Legion, like ULA, Dexter, whatever, for them to actually somehow work together, even if it's loosely, and then establish a part of South Africa? Everybody talks about secession. Wouldn't that be the time to actually draw a line in the sand and say, this is the area we're going to defend because we don't want the coronavirus to come and break into our area, and then just basically cement that area down? What are your thoughts on that, Simon?
We're not averse to that, Scott. The problem is that our doctrines diverge so radically that they're irreconcilable. Let me give you an example. Boer Legion want to get buses and to seal off suburbs. But if there is a threat, that threat is going to turn off the incoming water supply to that suburb. Not maybe, not could be, not possibly, not perhaps. They will do it. Therefore, remaining in your suburb is from the get-go hopelessly unfeasible. Only a dumb person would opt for that. And that, let me not say anymore, but we have grave reservations about where that philosophy originated. It is deliberately intended to mislead. There are, oh dear me, so there are things that I'm biting my tongue from telling you. We have access to highly privileged information.
Right.
This is not speculation on my part.
Right.
Right. So that's a non-starter. The ULA wishes to secede the what you might loosely call the old Cape from South Africa, using as its eastern border the Great Fish River, which was the border that the Xhosas asked for, and which was granted to them by the whites in a treaty in 1795. The Xhosas then repeatedly broke the treaty. There's no historian that disputes that. Where there is dispute is whether the retaliation of the whites was fair and good and just. But the treaty was repeatedly broken by the Xhosas. Nevertheless, that is the historical boundary between the Bantu peoples of South Africa and the whites and the Griqua and the Topnar and the I don't like to use the word San because it's a name given by the Bantu people to the Bushmen, and it means robbers. It's a very politically correct but extremely pejorative term. It's a despicable word. And the Khoi people, the first Xhosa people, and the first whites, in the form of Captain Robert J. Gordon, who was a Scotsman working for the Dutch East India Company. He was the commander of the fort in Cape Town, met on the east bank of the Great Fish River at modern-day Somerset East. So there is a profound historical justification for that particular border that the ULA is proposing. However, the ULA, and this is not hearsay, really, I know what I'm talking about, because we've been told this to our faces by the most senior people in the ULA. The ULA's specific plan, the story about the 2024 election is a red herring. It is a straw man argument. It is false. Their specific plan is to wait for a civil war to break out in South Africa and then to immediately secede, using us as a buffer between them and the government forces / the forces of the revolution / the marauding hordes. Now, it goes without saying that we have a massive problem with that. They told us this to our faces. We believe as much as you do that there's going to be a civil war. We're not a Christian organization. We don't believe in the prophecies of Wilmsina van Rensburg, but we know that there's going to be a civil war, and we are being backed by foreign governments. They are very strong. They are very powerful. They are very jacked up. But again, their philosophy, their doctrine diverges irreconcilably from ours. However, there are other organizations whose names I would prefer not to mention for obvious reasons here, with whom we have been treating for a long time, who are specific intent upon participating in our national emergency plan. They disagree with us here, they disagree with us there. We're Methodist, they're Presbyterian, we both believe in this, but we don't believe in. So what we have agreed with them is that where we believe that they are reliable and they have good capacity. We're not just talking about, blowhards. We're talking about serious organizations with good planning, good training, good capacity. We have said to them, all right, if you want to retain a modicum of autonomy, you don't want to fall under us, but you want to collaborate with us, then why don't you take, let's say, defensive perimeter, for want of a better word. Why don't you take the area between here and here? You've got 200 men. You can occupy this, let's say, for argument's sake, 20-kilometer stretch. And we have reached a lot of accord with such people. Scott, what you're talking about is absolutely correct. You are right. We're not saying that we're right and you're wrong. You are right, Scott. It should be a time in which people come together and act in unison and put aside their differences. But some of their doctrines are absolutely irreconcilable to the fundamental tenets of our plan. So, Boerelegio and ULA are completely out of the window. But there are many others whose names I prefer not to mention who are not. I don't deal with it. It's not my job. It's not my work. But every other week I hear about my relevant peers in the organization, senior people. We met with so-and-so, we met with so-and-so, we met with so-and-so. So there is an increasing amount of, let's say, intent to collaborate, as you are so rightly advocating, Scott.
Okay, now that's the conversation we had last week with Simon, and I know that Hein was very angry with some of the comments that were made, so I'm going to hand over to Hein now to respond to what Simon said and perhaps put the record straight so that everybody knows what the facts are. Over to you, Hein.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, unfortunately I didn't hear a word, so I've got to rely on my memory of a week ago. But what I remember very well was that firstly he said that I said we are not a Christian organization.
Right.
Now that to me is it's so ridiculous, it's childish, because anybody that knows me knows that I totally and 100% believes in God, and not only believes in God, but lives a clean, healthy life. I live according to how I was raised, and I was raised as a Christian, but as a strict Christian. So it's laughable to say that we are not Christian. I mean, how do I counter that? It's ridiculous. The other thing he said was that I said that the ULA's plan, that I remember very well, he said the plan is to wait for a civil war and then we will secede.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to get rude here, but either Simon had something to drink or to smoke before he had the meeting, if he makes these kind of comments. Because what I said, and I've said this in many open meetings, this is not a secret. What did I say earlier? Everything we plan to do, we even make public knowledge, is that I've said it and I will say it again. We want to secede on the legal or the de jure process in terms of international law. But part of that is that if a civil war breaks out, then because we have followed international law for secession up until the point that we have, which is basically, and again, I was also attacked, somebody in our organization started talking about 97%, and somebody attacked me and said, how can you say it's 97%? How did you make the calculation? Well, I don't care how we make the calculation. It means that it is virtually there. The point is, it is 96.9% if somebody will feel better. The reality is, we are virtually there. So if a civil war breaks out, in terms of international law, we can secede, even if we don't have the mandate. Why? Because the basis, the legal basis for your secession changes. And that is, you will secede, firstly because you followed that whole process. So you have already given the international law, international community, according to international law, all the prerequisites that they need for basically looking at your situation and saying, well, will we allow it or won't we? But when you secede, when there's a civil war, you do it because you want to prevent loss of life. You want to prevent loss of infrastructure. You want to prevent destruction. So that's actually quite a very logical thing in international law, that when civil war breaks out and you are 90% plus in your process, then you can. So no, I've never said that that is our plan. That would be foolish. I mean, it's not even close to what our plan is. That is part of our plan. That if secession, civil war breaks out, then we can secede. Simple. I'm thinking now a week back. What else did he say?
Oh, I'll tell you. The two big ones that I got were that the borders of your new state would be on the Fish River in the east.
Yeah. Again, that he sucked out of his thumb totally, because if you look at our border, it is not even close to the Fish River. Why? I've actually said earlier in this conversation that we used the 2011 IEC figures. Now, if you actually have two brain cells, we don't have even close to the majority of votes. Basically, northeastwards of Port Elizabeth, basically to the Fish River. We don't have it. So we can't secede to the Fish River. And he made a very big thing about the history in 1795 and I don't know what it was. I actually don't want to drink or smoke the stuff that he smokes because it makes you look stupid, to say the least of it. I don't understand what he tried to do, because our borders, by the way, as a matter of interest, in terms of international law, is one of the first things that you must do. You must determine your group of people that I said earlier, and then you must say and indicate your borders.
Now, Hein, what is the eastern border of the proposed state that you're looking at setting up? Is it a river, or what? Just so that people know a defined point.
No, it's the N2 that basically goes towards Port Elizabeth, and at Port Elizabeth it takes the, I don't know which one is that, which N, it's the N road that goes up from there.
Going up north.
Towards Colesberg, that's correct.
Okay.
It's the road.
So that's your eastern border.
Because in this, sorry, say again.
That's your eastern border.
That's correct. It's
Okay.
not the Fish River.
Yeah.
We all would have liked it to be the historically Fish River, because historically, and we can go on about it. No. It's not, because we don't even have close to, I don't think we are even 10%, the minorities in that area.
Yeah.
So it's not. I don't know where he sucked that out of his thumb. It's not even close to that.
Right. Okay, now, the other thing that he talked about was Saitland as being a buffer, acting like the army buffering ULA. Do you want to respond to that?
I remember that. But laugh. I can only laugh, because how does he get the two together? The ULA is a legal process. So where does the buffer come in? I don't actually even understand the remark. I don't understand his remark of them being a buffer. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
We don't have members. Remember that. We are not an organization that have members, with members being part of the ULA to say, right, we've got this organization, we've got these people here, those people there, the ranks here. We don't have it. It's a mandate that we are looking at. We've got 226,215, I think, at this stage, votes as a mandate. That's what we are. So a buffer between what and what? Again, how do they say? It's crazy shit that he smokes. Must be, because I don't have a clue what he's talking about.
What I can't understand personally is that really working together makes a huge amount of sense, because you have got like different strengths, and really fighting or bringing out statements that cause further fractions between different groups is not a positive thing at all.
It's not productive, Scott. I mean, that's very logic, and this is why I said earlier when you asked me, I told you that the relationship between myself and the leader of the Zuidlanders was actually, I would say it was a friendship. And in fact, like he said, well, you guys are doing the so-called political side, and we will do the extraction or self-defense side of it, which makes sense. My question is, where does this whole thing suddenly come from, where the ULA must be attacked by Simon Roche? I don't understand it. You see, the sad thing is that if you look at this, then I've got to ask myself the question, and a lot of people must ask themselves the question, with this investigation that was in the news last year, I think it was the beginning of last year, about Simon Roche and his so-called connections to the government and money washing, there's a lot of stuff that I don't want to go into about him. Then my question is, wow, suddenly a lot of things make sense. So let's attack the ULA, make them look stupid, or whatever he wants to do, because it makes them look better. What doesn't he understand of a solution? Or is the solution perhaps the problem for him? Because if the solution is there, then obviously the Zuidlanders doesn't have any reason to exist anymore. And then suddenly, he must start actually working again.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't work at this time. So, and this is the sad thing, but of course, I mean, last year alone, we put out 2 statements, which I signed, which I made it very clear. We will work with any organization or person that strives towards self-determination legally. Because remember, not everybody wants to do it legal. Well, we will work with everybody. Because at the end of the day, the solution is for everybody. We're not saying when we have self-determination or secession and then self-determination, that it will only be for certain people. That's illegal, you can't do it. I've actually used the term a lot of times. I've said, you know, we work for the self-determination that we want is for the ugly, the beautiful, the rich, the poor, the criminal, as well as the law-abiding citizen, and for you as well. It's for everybody. You can't exclude people. People that are legally in that area is part of it. Even, believe it or not, that's logic, even if they voted no. But now suddenly they form part of the minority because you are in the majority. So the reality is, this solution is for everybody in the area. But it's specifically for everybody that's part of the minority grouping, of which the Zuidlanders are also part of, logically. So Scott, I don't understand, I really don't understand the basis or the reason for attacking us. Yes, I can start guessing, but I don't want to do it. Let's rather look at the solution. Let's rather talk about the positive side of this, because
before we do that, we do that, there was one other suggestion made by Simon, and I'm just bringing this up because it's something that you probably forgot. He basically suggested that big money is behind the ULA, and without suggesting who. And now you said earlier that basically you're self-funding, and you need donations and stuff like that because you don't have a lot of money. So what is the truth on that side?
Scott, if Simon thinks that I have big money, well, that's a matter of perception, because the money behind the ULA is me, Hein Marx. There's no other money apart from somebody that gives 50 Rand here, 300 Rand there, 100 Rand there. There is no money behind the ULA. I basically sponsor 99% of what must be paid for.
Right.
But then again, I don't know. I suppose the money that I have is big money, not in my eyes. So, and that's sarcasm. There is no, let me make this very clear. The ULA is run by the people, for the people. There is no organization, any organization other than the ULA itself involved here. Nobody, apart from international governments, that may not even do it officially, but backs us, but don't give money because they may not give us money. We are just a couple of people, and I'm talking about the management now, because there's a lot of people involved also working for the ULA, doing it on the same basis as we are all doing it. And that's on a pure, free basis where people see that this is the solution, and the work at this stage is to get votes. There's no organization. Somebody actually asked me tonight, how many Freemasons are involved? I said, well, in the management I can guarantee you nobody. If there are people that vote for the ULA, that are Freemasons, how would I know? I don't know. I don't care if they vote. Perhaps if they vote for us, then they are more clever than the ones that just want to attack us. I don't know. I'm not a Freemason. I'm not a Broederbonde or Afrikanerbonde. In fact, I don't belong to any organization other than the ULA. And no, there is no money involved other than, I say, and I'm talking about literally change that we get in sometimes. In fact, I think we get in less than 1,000. No, I think it's closer to 500 rand per month.
Wow.
The rest comes out of my pocket.
Right. Okay. Well, that clears that up. Now, what I want to do is I just want to address the side chat. And you sell those, do you, on the website?
No.
Okay. Well, let's just.
No, people want to actually start doing it.
Yeah.
They're welcome to do it. In fact, last week somebody asked me if they can sell key holders, and they will give us a kickback. Oh, sure, please do it.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to make money out of it, get the logo or the message out, and we can get a kickback from it. Fantastic, because we are actually aiming. And we've been busy with this for quite some time, but we don't get the money to do a very big Facebook marketing campaign.
Right.
But you need money for it.
You do. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to address the people watching. There's close to 250 people watching at the moment. Now, if you'd like to post questions you'd like to submit to Hein, just put them in the side chat, and I will direct them to Hein. Jarko, if you wouldn't mind just cutting and pasting them if they're sort of coming through when Hein is talking and we're discussing a particular question, that'd be fantastic. So now's the time to post your questions to Hein. While people are doing that, Hein, my thought is that perhaps a debate between yourself and Simon or Gustav could be an idea, just to nut these things out so that at least he understands more about your organization, because he doesn't seem to know the facts. What are your thoughts on that?
Scott, in fact, last year, apart from the two letters that we've put out, statements that we've put out to say that we will work with everybody, I have invited many people, and I'm talking about, I'm not going to go into the names now, it's unnecessary, but leaders of well-known political parties, leaders of totally unknown political parties, and they've actually got the biggest mouths, organizations that are known, organizations that are not known, leaders of organizations, please, and not as a fight, but as a discussion, let's go onto an open platform. If there's anything that you don't agree with us, or that you want to know more about, let's discuss it, please. Because you see, the interesting thing about the ULA is that for me to defend the ULA is completely intriguingly easy. Why? Because it's law. You can't fight with international law. You can't fight with the South African law, in this case the Constitution. So you can't tell me what we're doing is illegal in terms of South African law, because it's in the Constitution. You can't fight with me of what we're doing in terms of international law, because it's law. So this is the whole point. All I want to do, and all the ULA wants to do, is to get the message out. That's all it is. We're not there to try and compromise any organization or political party or whatever. No, we would love each and every legal organization to rather subscribe to the idea, to get their people to say, yes, I want it. Simple. Yes, I want it. It takes 30 seconds. If you are BC like I am, that's before computers, it takes you 60 seconds. Because that's how easy it is. Go onto ulacongress.com. It opens up. It says mandates and total mandates. go onto mandates, fill it in, send, and it's done. We don't ask for money. We don't ask for your cat, dog, budgie, pet snake, or your soul.
Could you hold
We
a
just
second,
say,
please?
do you want it?
Could you hold a second, please, Hein? Burgeli, if you do that again, I'm going to ban you from the side chat, okay? Stop spamming. Okay, sorry, Hein, carry on.
So what we're saying is that we just want the people to realize we're not here to lead anybody by the nose other than there is the solution. Now, the reality about what we've done up until now is that the whole legal process that we have followed is totally and completely useless if we don't get the mandate.
Right.
And then my question is, what is the next solution then? There is no solution. There is no solution in this country other than a two-state solution, secession. So I invite, and I do it here now as well, I invite each and every leader of each and every organization in this country. That includes the leader of the ANC, to come and tell me why we can't do it. What is wrong with the idea? What is wrong with the idea of a two-state solution? If the ANC government is now for secession in Western Sahara and they're for secession in Palestine, why not for secession in their own country with people that are oppressed? We all know that that is a fact. So I'm saying each and every organization in this country, if you don't know what we're doing, if you're unsure, if you think it's madness that we're doing, please, let's have a discussion. And I'm even sure, Scott, you will accommodate that as a discussion as well. I don't know.
Absolutely. I would love I would love to have you debating other groups about different things and discussing so that there's clarity and then you can start working together.
Yeah, and then if people wants to ask me questions of, but where's the money? Because somebody, can't even remember who it was. Oh, I know exactly what it was. It was also a group that was talking about, oh, but where's the one said $375 million. By the way, make the calculation, just think of how much money in rand that is. Right. And the other one said the other $25 million that you got. Well, Scott, I can tell you, if we got $25 million, no, even if we got $1 million, I can guarantee you, because unfortunately that's a money stroke vote game, we would not have been on 226,000, because each and every social media platform in this country would have been totally flooded with ULA. Because that is our problem in South Africa. People don't know about the ULA, and how do we get to them?
Right.
That costs money, unfortunately. I mean, it's the same thing. Why do we have so many professors, doctors? In fact, one of our people is actually in management, he's a professor. Why do we have so many professional people, including, funny enough, advocates, that are doing this, are part of the ULA because they see it can work, because they see that this is a very viable, in fact, the only viable legal option. But the interesting thing is the people that don't work, that sit and live off members' fees, they're the ones that attack us.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go into my business. I'm extremely busy with my business, but I don't see another option than for us to secede. There is just no other option.
Right. Now, we got another question for you, Hein. Hein Hein, has the ULA extended their hands to AfriForum and Solidarity to cooperate and work together?
You see, I pride myself to say that I don't lie. So my answer to your question is yes. I've actually physically been to them. Yes, Kali Kriel has physically been in my house on his own accord. He asked to come and see me. Do they work with us? No.
Okay.
Can I tell you why?
Yeah,
no,
tell us.
I don't know. No, I don't know.
Oh, okay. So you don't know why they want to work with you.
Perhaps, I don't know. Perhaps because if we do secede, then there's no reason for them to still exist. Both Solidarity as well as AfriForum.
I want to ask you a question, which I'm a bit confused by, and it's sort of really the whole foundation of seceding, and that is that on one hand you've got to get 50% plus 1 of the population in that area, which looks like a really big task to achieve, and then on the other hand, if there's a civil war in South Africa, you're saying that you would, as a direct result of the breakdown of the government and everything that's going on, be able to secede that portion of South Africa that you're trying to secede, even though you don't have the 50% plus 1. Can you explain how that works?
Okay. Yeah, it's actually a very relevant question. Just in the way that you stated it, it's not that simple. It's not as simple as when you have a civil war, then you can automatically, let me rather put the word onto the whole sentence, successfully secede. Because seceding, that's the easy part after you've done your homework, because that's basically the handing in of papers. But to successfully have seceded, you need one other country to recognize you as an independent country again. And that's basically the answer. Which means, because part of the whole legal process is that you've got to be able to prove, and there's a lot of things that must prove that, to start off with, because that's a very important thing, is you've got to prove your feasibility for your area. Now, I always use the example in South Africa of a farm. Let's say you've got a farm of 1,000 hectares, and you've got 10 children. If you go and divide that farm up into 10 pieces, not one of those 10 pieces is viable anymore, and therefore it's actually totally illegal in South Africa to do that. You can't just divide a farm up because it's your children, you want to give each an equal part. You can't do it. Now, that's the same with seceding in terms of international law. You can't just go and secede to be independent, but you're not sustainable. So therefore, you've got to also have a professional feasibility study of the area, which was one of the first things that we did. That was many years ago.
Right.
And it's not, again, it was done, by the way, to get that done by professional economists. It must be an economist. We're talking about big money here. You talk about big money. That was done by a very, very good friend of mine, who is now, so therefore I can say it, because he retired December. He was one of the two head economists of Absa Bank. He did it for me because he also believes in the process. Funny enough, that learned people like that also believe in this. So he spent his time and effort to do that. And then there's a lot of other stuff that the EXCO, of which I'm part of the ULA, we did the rest. So the point is that you can't just secede because you have a bee in your bonnet. There's a lot of stuff that you've got to do. So to then, if a war breaks out, to secede, you've got to, and this is the important point that I actually want to make, Scott, is that you've got to make sure in the whole process that one other country will support it. Because if they don't support it, you've wasted your time.
Right.
There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. In fact, again, and let me address this before somebody asks the question, unlike Catalonia in Spain, no, it's not illegal in South Africa to do it, because our constitution, in various articles of the constitution, actually makes provision for independence, of which Article 235, a lot of people use that as the basis, is the worst example, by the way, because it's a law, and it actually says in the law that must be written.
Isn't there?
So Article 235 is the worst example.
Isn't there a document that was signed just before the election?
That's the accord. Yeah, that's the accord of the 23rd of April 1994.
Yeah.
That General Constant Viljoen, basically, he was very good friends with the American ambassador Andrews, and he made it very clear to Andrews that if the ANC does not sign the accord, and the accord is nothing else than a document that says, but they were talking about only about the Afrikaner, but it's the legal basis. If they don't sign that accord, that the ANC, and in that case still the National Party, gives the Afrikaner the right for self-determination, then General Viljoen said he had 60,000 men ready. He will disrupt the elections and he will start a civil war. And he was very dead serious about it. And therefore, that Andrews actually basically forced Mbeki to sign that agreement on the 23rd of April.
And on
the 27th, 1994,
yeah.
The 23rd, and the election was the 24th. The 27th, 4 days later.
Now, what is the relevance of that document today? Massive, because that, apart from the legal document that it is, and apart from the fact that it was hidden from the public for 24 years, but let's not go into the detail of that. And I asked the people that hid it, because I was told by General Viljoen exactly who to ask for and who hid it, and they said, no, well, they don't know where it is. They don't know where it is. And it went on like that for a long time, until one of the signatures of the accord, Baron van der Ropp from Germany, found me out of the blue, and he said, I hear you're looking for the accord. I said, yes, seriously, I'm looking for it. I said, do you know where it is? I said, no, but I've got a copy. And the interesting thing is, that is the copy that is now in circulation on internet. Where's the original?
Sorry?
Where is the original?
Still don't know.
So you think?
Well, we know where it is. No, we know where it is, but that never surfaced again.
Right.
But it's irrelevant, because the copy is just as relevant in any case. So, in terms of your question what's the relevance of the accord? It's extremely important, because that shows the intention of the ANC before the elections that they will give that right of self-determination to the Afrikaner. And in fact, the interesting thing is that in 1994, we had a so-called interim constitution. That constitution, according to that constitution, had to be interim for 2 years. And in 1996, they had obviously this big, massive constitutional court case looking at the interim constitution to decide on each and every article, if it must change, if it must stay the same, whatever, to put in the final constitution. And still today, you can find that even on Google. In terms of Article 235, it was made very clear, and that is on record, because that's part of the record of the Constitution, is that Article 235 can go through as it was. It was another article before 1996, because the accord, and it specifically in that court case refers to the accord. So the accord is extremely important, because that is the document that says we may have it. And it gives, again, like I said, it gives the intention. Now, an agreement, any legal agreement in the world, the intention of the agreement is a very, very integral and important part of that agreement. The fact that they signed it before the elections, and then 2 years after the elections, finalized it and said in the court, yes, that was the intention, and we can put it in the Constitution. It's there. Now, the unfortunate thing, because we will have a million people coming up now and say, oh, but if that's the case, can we take them to court? You can't take the South African government to court, because they will laugh at you. So what you can do is you can go to the international court in The Hague. There's just one very small little problem with that. Where's the money going to come from? That's the problem.
Right.
Because the international court in The Hague is extremely expensive. And I say extremely. Because if you think a constitutional hearing in South Africa is expensive, times that by 100 in The Hague, and then you times it times 17 to get to the euro in any case, and then you have your figure. We don't have the money for that, believe me. And the people, the real people that make the big money in South Africa at the moment, they don't want independence. Why? Because they're part of the corrupt system. Come on, let's be honest with each other.
Right.
They are totally part of the corrupt system. People that used to do business in South Africa, I'm talking about big business now, suddenly do it much easier, because they just pay some money under the blanket and they do it much easier.
Yeah.
That's part of our problem in South Africa.
Yeah.
We all look at the ANC and say they are the big problem. Of course they're the problem, but they can't be corrupt on their own. The Guptas have proven it.
Yeah, it's a gangster state. Now,
exactly. Two parties. You can't have one guy that's corrupt. You need two parties to be corrupt.
Yeah, I've got another question here for you, and before I tell you what it is, Fiona said quite correctly that we've got a triple whammy hitting South Africa this year. That is the expropriation without compensation, the coronavirus, and the rand going to junk. And that's going to slam dunk the economy. And clearly that could lead to something very nasty in South Africa.
Scott, I totally 100% agree with him for many reasons. In 2000, I think it was 2014, I got a mandate from the Freedom Front to investigate and write a report on self-determination. But the reality of that was just to keep me busy, because I then spent a couple of months driving around and flying around South Africa, going to Orania many times, because the original Volksraad documents been kept there. And I wrote the document on self-determination, which, by the way, was never accepted by the Freedom Front. And the one thing that I said in that was that the fall of South Africa and the start of a civil war will be because of the fall of the economy.
Yeah.
And I remember very well in 2014, there were rumors and talks about problems with Eskom. And I don't think I can't remember if I wrote it in the report, but I remember I talked about it and said, if Eskom falls and we don't have electricity, then obviously the economy falls. If the economy falls, then you've got civil war. Why? Because if the economy falls, there are millions and millions of people in this country that literally lives, and I'm talking about food, from day to day. Where are they going to get money?
Well, the SASSA card will close down.
Oh, obviously, that's part of it. I'll never forget, I had a meeting in Oranje, now that you say that, in Oranje, and the people were sitting there, and I said, well, how many people do you actually think? I'm talking about 2014 or 15.
Right.
For each SASSA grant receiver, how many people actually live off that money? And the one guy, I'll never forget, he was actually the chairman of the Oranje movement, won't mention his name. He sat right in front and he said, well, at least 6 or 7. And we had, if I remember correctly, I said at that stage it was something like 14 or 15 million people on SASSA grants. And I said, well, I think we would like to believe it's that much, but it's impossible, because 15 times 6 is more people than we have in South Africa.
Yeah.
But practically, let's be very practical about it. At least 2 people, minimum 2 people, live off SASSA grants. We know it. So with just over 17 million that we have on SASSA at the moment, I think it's closer to 18 million. You're talking about in the region of 35 million people that will not have money for food.
Yeah.
But you're talking only about the SASSA side of it. How many people are jobless that can't get SASSA? They don't qualify for SASSA. Mm. I think it's actually more than the SASSA people at this stage. I think there are more people that are jobless that can't qualify for SASSA. So already you're talking about, well, I would say close to 35, 40 million people that will literally not have a cent for food. I mean, if you go in South Africa, from the smallest little town to the biggest cities, but obviously it's more apparent in the smaller towns, especially in the towns where previously there were absolutely no blacks, not one. Suddenly you go to those small little towns, and for some funny reason in my head, Petrusville comes up now, but they're all like that. And you get there and it's packed with blacks. Why?
Yeah.
There are no jobs. Because they live off SASSA money. They've been bussed, trained, flown, rode, walked into those towns for no other reason than for political reasons. Because now they can vote there and keep the ANC in power. You see, this is the bad thing about the nice thing that Margaret Thatcher said. Socialism eventually must fail, because eventually you run out of other people's money.
Yeah. Now, just on that point you raised there, Hein, don't you think there's a problem in the Western Cape because the ANC are trucking in so many people from the Eastern Cape to try and boost their numbers there? Because wouldn't that sort of create an overflow from what used to be a minority state or minority area?
Well, let me answer you in 2 ways with this. Firstly, yes, it is a problem, because it's a problem that there are more and more blacks coming in that will also not get jobs. But that's irrelevant to the ANC, because they don't pay them SASSA, they promise them jobs, and there are no jobs. So that, from a social point of view, but also socio-economic point of view, it is a massive problem. From our point of view as the ULA, it's irrelevant. Why? Because when we started this legal
so you're going back to when you started. Right.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
They can bus in 50 million. It's irrelevant.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
But you see, the problem is that if you can't even pronounce the figures, 50 million, 50, 100, 2, how did our previous president? How can they understand the concept?
Yeah.
Of not understanding this is a legal process and this is an international legal process.
Yeah. I don't think Zuma can count beyond 10. Now, I've got another question here from White Wolf Lone Wanderer, and he says, how and what is going to be divided, and which states? And he says, these are the most important facts. I think what he's talking about is like state-owned enterprises and stuff like that. How do you actually divide them between the two states?
That's call it common law in international law. When you secede, and if he's talking about specifically now state-owned property, government,
that sort of
building,
stuff.
Whatever, everything that is in the new seceded area belongs to the new country. Simple. A government building can't belong to the old government, it belongs to the new country. Military equipment, police equipment, let's call it Kuberg, power station, can't belong to the old government, belongs to the new government, or to the new country. But there's another very interesting point on this. That's something else that I just remember now that Simon Ross also talked about that we don't believe anything that Sindar van Rensburg said. That's not what I said. I made it very clear, and I will say it again. The problem with a lot of people is that they believe more in Sindar van Rensburg than in God. They believe more in Sindar van Rensburg than in the Bible. And my words, why do I remember it? Because I always say it, is that you must be really stupid not to believe in Sindar van Rensburg, because there's more than enough proof that he definitely had something or some protection or some whatever from God. But you can't live by everything that Sindar said, because that in itself is another problem. How can somebody that writes a book in the year, call it 2000 or 2020 if you want to, know what Sindar van Rensburg said in the year 1900 or 1920? Because that person uses the words of somebody that wrote it down from what he heard from somebody else that heard it from somebody else that heard it from Sindar. How factual is that? That's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
So in terms of using Sindar van Rensburg as your Bible, that's dangerous. In fact, I think it's totally 100% against the Bible. I've got myself totally off my own story now.
Okay. Now, I've got another question here for you, Hein. Can you explain to the viewers how a confederation system works? And just while I'm talking, we've got nearly 300 people watching at the moment. Over to you.
Okay. All right. It's a very good and extremely relevant question, because there's a lot of misconceptions on this. Why? Because what the ULA is saying is that we want to form a confederate system with the minorities. Who's the minorities? It's all the colored nations with all the European nations or people in South Africa. Now, if you understand a confederate system, then you will understand that is a perfect good system. A confederate system, the closest current confederate system in in the world, is the Swiss canton system. By the way, that includes Geneva. Geneva is actually in Switzerland.
Not according to a minister.
No, well, it's the South African minister, so it's irrelevant. Now, it's not a pure, Switzerland is not a pure confederate system. It's the closest to a confederate system. But let me explain the difference between a federal and a federal system and a confederate system. A confederate system consists out of various completely sovereign nations that form a confederate area. Which means, let's take a practical example, the Nama. And we don't have to go and find an area. Namaqualand is there because it's always been for the Namas. The Namas have got a border on the west coast, but they've got a border towards the north, the Orange River, to southwest Africa as well. Now, the important thing about a confederate system is that you want the whole confederate area to be safe. So therefore, a confederate system, and I'm talking about the pure confederate system, which is what we would love to have, is that you would have an extremely small central government. If you have a president, it would only be a president for ceremonial purposes. It's got no power. But the important thing about this central government will be Department of Foreign Affairs. Why? Because in that confederate system you must have the same laws on that specific topic. You can't have one country doing business in one way with another country and another confederate system in another way, because in between you will have virtually open borders, but your outside borders must be protected. And that's why I said about, let's say for instance, the sea and the river. You will also have one central, in that central government, army, because that army must protect your outside borders. You don't have to have an army to go to the Congo and go and get and give aids there and land on flag posts and get stuck in the sand with extremely sophisticated equipment and bump your very, very expensive submarines into the sea bottom because you can't actually work with it. You need a very professional military.
Right.
But you also need one monetary system, which means you've got to be able to deal with each other and pay the same currency. So you'll have one currency. And that's basically what it is, which means each and every, let's again go to Namaqualand. Namaqualand, the Namas will have their own government. And we can't tell them how to do it. They've got to decide themselves. It's got nothing to do with us. The Khoisan Bushmans will have Bushmanland. They will decide how to do it. The Griquas will have Griqualand. They will decide how to do it. And the whites will have their area, which is basically the whole of the Karoo, and including the east coast up to Port Elizabeth, and we will decide how we will do it. But your central government of your army and their Department of Foreign Affairs, that's a central army.
Right.
So there's nobody in that central government that controls other states. They're sovereign. But very interestingly enough, again, in what we have already put on paper, is to say that those states will have the right to, in future, secede away from this confederate system. They have the right to do it. Because again, why take Catalonia, Spain as an example? By the way, exactly the same as South Africa. Why may the Catalonians not secede away from Spain, apart from the fact that it's in their constitution? But why isn't their constitution? I'll tell you why. Because Catalonia is the richest area in Spain. They need Catalonia to, the politicians live like kings. That's why.
Yeah.
And the king, by the way, to live like a king. In South Africa, it's the same thing. Why may the minorities, of which the Europeans, the whites, are the more affluent part of it, why may we not secede away? Because we are the goose that lay the golden eggs. Can you imagine, take yourself on a this is not a fantasy trip, this is a very realistic trip. Can you imagine, if we must secede away, what will happen to the rest of the old South Africa? It'll be ruined, not in 25 years, in less than 5 years. There'll be nothing. In fact, there won't even be food.
Yeah, there's not much left anyway.
Exactly.
Now, okay, I've got another couple of questions here which are related, and what I might do is I might just put up an image while I'm asking you this question, because it is related. Okay, what I've put up there is the image of the area that Hein is talking about. The coloured area is the area that's going to be seceded under the ULA's plan. Now, the questions I've got here, Hein, from Darby, who's an old friend of this channel, and good to see you here, Darby. He says, "Sir, ask him which provinces will be in the secession." And White Wolf has asked a similar question, saying, "Hein, what area? Please define this." So I've actually got the image of the area up there, and I see yellows, Cape Town's in yellow, there's a red strip, and then there's a blue strip right on the eastern border, and then the orange piece that goes, looks actually a gold piece that goes up in a very jagged format. You want to just go through that map by color and explain what these regions are.
The colors, because I don't have the map in front of me, but
Right.
let's start off with the Cape Peninsula, which I happen to know is yellow, yeah. In terms of Confederate systems, the Cape Peninsula is it was the most difficult to decide how do we deal with it. Because the Cape Peninsula have literally belonged to the whites and the Khoi people, well, basically since 1652.
Right.
Which means if you've got to say today that the Cape Peninsula belongs to the whites, it'll be totally and completely unfair, because it doesn't only belong to the whites. Vice versa is also true. You can't say it belongs to the coloureds, because, and I use specifically that word coloureds and not Khoi, because they are coloured now. They're not Khoi there anymore. And the whites must go out. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you can't do it. So the Cape Peninsula, you don't have a choice other than to say that must be the only Confederate state which is not based on, call it ethnicity, color, nation.
Right.
It must be as it's been for the past, well, nearly 400 years. But in the same sense, Cape Town is also the economic hub of this whole area we're talking about, with a harbour, with international airport, everything. So obviously, and I say obviously because that's very obvious, the idea would be to make that a kind of a tax-free zone.
Right.
Because you attract international investors at a massive scale if you do that. So the Cape Peninsula will be a so-called, not a rainbow nation. Get that out of your head. It's basically the colours in the Europeans. Then you go, I don't have the colours now, but let's go up the west coast.
Okay,
on the west
got a
coast
light
you've
blue.
got, I think there's an area which is Boland, I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
Which it actually ends at Namakwaland. I
Right.
don't know the color of Namakwaland, but Namakwaland is for the Namas.
Yeah, it's dark
Simple.
blue.
If you go from there, go east, obviously then you've got Bushman land,
Right.
Bushman land, including parts of the Kalahari, that's part of South Africa, that's for the Sun. Now the interesting thing nowadays is that the Khoi Sun see themselves as one.
Right.
And it's very interesting because many years ago, a couple of years ago, the Khoi, San, Nama and Griqua got First Nation status from the United Nations.
Right.
But the Khoisan is actually one, practically in South Africa.
Oh, exactly.
So then you've got Bushmanland, and then east of that you've got Griqualand. Now the interesting thing again with Griqualand, if you look at the old maps, is that Griqualand started at Hope Town,
Right.
and it went right past Kuruman, right up to the border of Botswana. But in the past, I think it's about 50, 60 years, the Swanas actually moved south. And they occupied, as workers, obviously, in the old South Africa and before 1961. And they occupied in mass that area, basically just south of Botswana.
Right.
So that area, which practically is part of Griqualand, we can't, at this stage, in terms of our IEC figures, we can't include it because there are not enough of our people. If I say our people, I'm talking about the minorities. So we can't include it. So Griqualand is actually a bit smaller.
Right.
That's Griqualand West. Griqualand East is basically where Transkei is. I don't know if you know that.
Yes.
That is totally, it's out. It doesn't exist anymore. The Griquas have basically lost it. It's not there anymore. And then the rest of the area, which is basically the Great Karoo, the Karoo, and the East Coast, up to Port Elizabeth from, well, basically from Caledon, Grabouw, up to Port Elizabeth. That's your European or white area.
Right.
And then the next question would automatically be, but what do you do with the colors that live there, and what do you do with the whites that live in the Griqualand? Hartswater, for instance, as an example, Hartswater is most probably one of the most efficient irrigation projects in South Africa. And for the people that don't know it, I don't know if you know how it started, Scott. It started in 1933 with the Great Depression. That whole area belonged to the church in Gekak. And with the massive problem in the Johannesburg on the gold mines, problem with the whites that didn't have work, the church actually said, we will give each family 1 hectare to farm on. But the land doesn't belong to them. It still belongs to the church, but you can go and farm there.
Right.
Now remember, they didn't have irrigation then. They only had the water, so they had to use a flooding system. Mm-hmm. And they gave each family a hectare to live on. They didn't build houses, RDP houses. They didn't give them grants, SASA. It didn't exist. They said, there's a piece of land, there's water. Go and make a living, because you're dying of hunger in Johannesburg. And in fact, the whites that went there made such a massive success that many, many years later, the church said, whoa, this is unfair now. The property belongs to us. But look how these people have developed it. And they then said, right, they then sold that to the people. And what happened, which is this, it's always the same in any community in the world, white, pink, colored, whatever you want, there are people that were better farmers. So let's just take a figure. They said, we'll sell the hectare to you for 20 pounds, because there was pounds then still. Mm-hmm. But the one guy was more successful, so he said, okay, well, I'll buy my neighbor and his neighbor and this neighbor and that neighbor. I'll buy all of that money. I'll buy it and I'll give them 55 pounds. So each person could get an extra pound for himself, and the other 50 would go to the church. And that's how Hartswater started.
Right.
Now, a lot of people have asked me what happens, and I mean, this is practical and I understand it. And I suppose it's very easy to sit in the area that we're going to secede and say, guys, come to the land of milk and honey. It's not that easy for somebody that doesn't live in the area but wants to move, and practically now it's too late. They can't sell their properties anymore.
Yeah.
I had a farmer here today. Yeah, with me today. His farm is worth between 20 and 24 million rand. He told me today, if he can get 12 million for it, he'll sell it immediately, but he can't get 12.
Wow.
That's the sad thing. So what do you tell these people?
I have a question
and this
for
is
you.
What I'm saying. Yes.
Hein, I have a question for you. On the map, half of the Free State is shown as not part of the area that's going to be seceded. Now, north of the Orange River, and basically the whole of the Free State, was occupied by the Griqua people long before the Voortrekkers came through, and they were basically kicked off their land. There were no blacks in that area at all, but the Boers actually came through and kicked the Griquas off their land in it was about 1825, 1826. There were wars in that area at that time. Now,
that's why they started people at least.
Yeah, the question I have is, why isn't the rest of the Free State included in this area? Because there were no blacks there at all. Is that because there's so many blacks who've moved in now?
That's the problem.
I see. Okay.
Because in terms of international law, if you go practically, go and look at what area of the current South Africa was occupied, literally occupied by the whites, then you will see that it is, I think the figure is 83%. 83% of the country. And I'm literally talking about even pre 1930s.
Right.
Okay. So practically, it belonged to us. How did we get it? We bartered and tendered for it. We fought for it. We basically just went in and lived there because there was nobody.
Yeah.
Legally, it was ours. So if you look at the pre-1994 South Africa, theoretically, more than pre-1994 belonged to us, because during the National Party government, a lot of land was given to the blacks.
Yes.
Extra. A couple of million, I think it's about 1 million. I think it's about 1 million hectares. I'm not 100% sure of the figure. Somewhere around there. Was bought from South African farmers and incorporated into black areas. Venda, Papua-Tswana, even the Transkei, Natal. So the area that we're talking about, we unfortunately must use current law, international law, and current international accepted norms under the law. And this is why the easiest one that we could use, but there's a bright side to this as well. There's a silver lining to this cloud, this dark cloud, is that we said the 2011 figures, where the minority is actually the majority. Okay, this is that map that you have and that you see. That's the map. But what is the silver lining? International law also makes it very clear that the borders that you indicate does not have to be final. What does that mean? It means very simply, look at Israel. Israel today is approximately 8 times bigger than it was in 1948 when it was formed as a new country.
Right.
Simple. How did they expand their borders? In their case, very simple. They were attacked and they took more land. They were attacked and they took more land. In fact, what was the Sinai War? I think it was 63. When Egypt, was it 73? When Egypt attacked them, they took the whole Sinai Peninsula, everything, right up until the Suez Canal. And they realized, we don't want it, so they just gave it back. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
The point is, trying to make is that the borders that people see there now, we've got to stick to the law. We've got to stick to acceptable norms. But international law is very clear. The borders that you indicate, that's the borders, does not have to be your final border.
Right. Now,
Scott, can you imagine what will happen if we get independence? That's another question.
right.
Will the ANC attack us?
Yeah, that's a very good
For
question.
sure they will attack us. Because if you are so stupid, arrogant, to do the things that they're doing now, you will even be more stupid, arrogant, to see that you are losing your goose that lays the golden eggs. You would rather than kill that, literally, kill that goose. They will attack us. Don't make a mistake, they will. Our borders will not stay the same. Plain, simple.
So how do you defend the new state?
Another question that must be answered in terms of international law. International law says, now this to me is a very, very powerful thing. For anybody that knows what the Geneva Convention means, the Geneva Convention is nothing else than the international law that basically controls what you may not do in a war. Interesting how the human race actually says you may have war and there are certain things you may not do. But the point is that's what the Geneva Convention is actually all about. Right. What you may not do. Which means there's a lot of things that you may not do in war. Like for instance biological, chemical, warfare, the whole old story of dum-dums and all of that stuff. International law in terms of secession says when you've seceded, now you must practically understand, if you secede, as we sit here today, we are organized, but we don't have an army. We are organized, but we don't have a police force. We are organized, but we've got nothing else than hunting rifles. So we don't have an army. So what does international law says? And don't forget, international law was not written for South Africa and for what we're doing today. What does international law says? It says, after you've seceded and you get attacked by talk about the mother country, and then, in brackets, then you may defend yourself in any way possible. That's powerful because that even goes against the international Geneva Convention.
Right.
But law goes further and it says, when you are attacked, the United Nations or any of the United Nations member countries must protect you against your mother country. That's interesting. Now, the logic, practical thing comes up again. If the United Nations comes and protects us against the ANC government, who will they send? They will send the closest troops, which means they are African troops. How do you think that will practically work for African troops to come and defend the whiteys against their brothers? It won't work. So we already made it very clear we do not want any help from the United Nations. We will use one of our partner countries not to protect us either, but to supply us to protect ourselves.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
I think so, yeah, absolutely. Now,
there's another but to this, Scott. There's another but.
Yeah.
And the cherry on the cake I left for last. But this is the cream on the cherry. In December 2018, Trump signed Article S1158 into law in America. And what does Article S1158 say? It is the Elie Wiesel Prevention of Genocide Act. And they already formed last year already, in fact it was in February last year, they formed a Marine Corps that is on standby for exactly that purpose.
this is the
So
US.
if we are the United States,
Right.
if we are attacked, this is the sad thing. A lot of people say, but we are attacked. Look at the farm murders. Unfortunately, it's not considered genocide yet. Totally ridiculous. I mean, we will all say that it is. But in terms of the definition of genocide, it's not genocide yet. But if we have to secede and they have to then use the military against civilians, that is a total open declaration of war against civilians.
Yeah.
Because remember, we are civilians. Even if we've successfully seceded, we are civilians.
Right.
America is ready to send their Marines immediately to defend us. Now, just as a matter of interest, that is not for the ANC, because we've heard that Ramaphosa said there's no farm murders. I mean, he's lied so much it's actually a joke.
It is a joke.
Malema have said that Donald Trump must be careful because we will send our troops, because then America's got problems. But let's just be practical for 1 second here.
Like a fly on an elephant. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. Only one aircraft carrier of America has got more firepower. If I say aircraft carrier, I'm talking about aircraft carrier group, because an aircraft carrier doesn't operate on its own. One aircraft carrier group has got more firepower than the whole of Africa's military, excluding Egypt, put together.
Wow.
And Mol Ema wants to fight with America.
Well, that's a joke. All right, guys, look, we've been talking for nearly 2 hours, and I've found this conversation fascinating. Are there any further questions people would like to ask of Hein? Okay, we'll just wait for those to come through. Okay, so I think we've pretty well covered all the aspects of ULA and what you are and who you are, etc. What I would like to just ask, okay, Tace has asked, what is the area in red? Let me just pull up the map and I'll tell you exactly where it is. Okay, the area in red is right on the coastline to the right of Cape Town.
That's Overberg.
Overberg. So would that be for which population group?
That's white country.
White country. Okay, so that'd be the white population there.
Yeah.
Okay. Hope that answers your question.
Does he want to buy a farm there? that's very fertile. Well, not very fertile, but very good farming land.
Right. Now, Hein, is there something you would like to say, and I'm leaving this totally up to you, but to say to Saitlanders, to try and reach out to them, and something you'd like to say to the people watching this video? I have no doubt that Saitlanders are watching this live stream, so maybe you have a message you'd like to give them, and then to the group.
My message to Saitlanders, to all Saitlanders, to all organizations, is exactly the same. People, we are either going to fight together or die divided. Simple. We will work with each and every organization that are legally striving or working towards self-determination. There is no reason. There's no reason, because personal reasons doesn't count here, whatever that personal reason is. There's no reason why people cannot just go and give a mandate to say, we want self-determination. We don't want your money. We don't want your people's names as members, because we don't have membership. We don't. For the Saitlanders, if we're a threat to you, you misunderstand the system completely. In fact, Gustav, you know how we work. You know that we are not a threat to you or any other organization. We want a solution. We don't want money to do anything else, if we have money, than for marketing to get the message out. That's all we want to do. If there's money, we will use it for marketing, and this is exactly what we do. So my message to all these groups, including Southlanders, there is no reason at all, not to give your mandate for freedom. To the people that listened, people, if you have any question, please, info @ulacongress.com, I think is the email address.
Jocko, could you just drop the ULA's website down in the side chat? Okay, sorry, carry on, Hein.
Yeah. Or just go to the ULA website, you will get all information there. To the people, please, if there's anybody, and I've been asking this for years, really for years, and I haven't had any other solution. Oh, I've had solutions that are so unpractical that I can't believe that people actually suggested. But I've had no other practical legal solutions for us to get our freedom. So I beg everybody to talk to your friends, your neighbors, your family, everybody, to get the word out. That is our biggest problem at this stage. If we had the money, like I said earlier, $1 million, we're talking about $1 million, that's 15 million rand. I am literally 99% sure that we will reach all the people that we want to reach in South Africa with that kind of money. But that money doesn't just float around. So what I'm asking and begging everybody, get the word out. Get people to go to ulacongress.com and just vote. For anybody that wants to get involved to help, please, there's a lot of people involved already, but we need more and more and more people. Why? Because like I've said earlier, we, the people, are working for the people. That's who we are. We are nothing else. I mean, I've heard again tonight that we are I think I told you, we are Freemasons. Or the question was, but then the Freemasons must be behind you. They started it. No, I started it. No, I'm not a Freemason. No. So please, thank you very much for everybody for listening. Thank you for being interested in the solution, because the solution is there. Unfortunately, we can't get the solution if we don't have the mandate. It's as simple as that. So, and to you, Scott, I must really again thank you. You're not even in South Africa, and you are concerned, which concerns me. That you, living in Australia, are more concerned about our problem than a lot of South Africans living in South Africa, thinking that things will just go on. It won't. It won't. We are on our way to a massive problem in this country. Massive. So, Scott, to you as a person, I really, really appreciate what you're doing for us in South Africa. That's really fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hein. And I've got a couple more questions for you, so I'm not letting you off the hook yet. Okay, we've got one.
It's only fine.
Question is, would the currency of the new state be backed by gold, or will it be fiat currency?
Well, the logical answer would be, and here I sign my death warrant in terms of international cartels, that it would be backed not necessarily by gold, but definitely not a fiat currency, no. Remember, it doesn't have to be gold.
Right.
It can be silver, for instance, as well. It can be copper. It can be anything that you can keep as the backing.
Right. And Klopper has asked, what will happen to prisoners? Will they be sent back to South Africa?
You're talking about, I suppose he's talking about black prisoners in our jails here.
Yeah.
That you'll send them the speed of light back, obviously. I don't care if we give them, set them free over the border. I don't care. But here they're not going to say, we're not going to look after parasites.
Right. Okay, I think that's pretty well all the questions. Are there any other questions people would like to ask? Because I'm going to shut down the live stream very shortly. And I just want to say, Hein, I hope that this platform that we gave you tonight has basically given you that opportunity to respond to comments that were made last week and to put your case. I think that what ULA is doing, it makes a lot of sense, personally. And I'd encourage people to sign that petition because, you know, I always talk about plan Bs, and what you're doing is a plan B, and a very workable one. Okay, so now I've got another question. What happens to KwaZulu-Natal after secession?
Very sad question, because in terms of the IEC figures, there's not one voting district in the whole of the KwaZulu-Natal that the minorities have got the majority. Not one. So, sad, but unfortunately a reality.
Now everybody's saying, what's happening to KwaZulu-Natal? I think I've just got Hein to answer that question. And unfortunately it's not a positive answer. Hi Fiona, lovely to see you here. And X Factor says, are you going to let the Africans into the new state like happened before?
If I want to be nasty, I'll say you're stupid. But I suppose he knows what I mean. Of course not. Of course not. The reality is, and again, look at America as a good example. Look at Germany is also a very good example after the Second World War. England was also a very good example. All countries that are big in manufacturing need labor, and they need as cheap as possible labor. Now let's be honest, people, that is where our biggest problem started. On the gold mines in the late 1800s, they used the blacks as cheap labor.
Yeah.
Which worked fantastic then. But what happened later? So we've got to say, but what are we going to do with cheap labor? And if I say cheap labor, we're talking about not misusing people because they are jobless. We're talking about unskilled labor. Let me rather use the correct word.
Right.
Because unskilled labor is automatically cheaper than skilled labor's logic. Because even, let's again use the gold mines as an example. You've got blacks that are, I don't know the names, boss, what do they call it? In any case, let's say some managers underground. They earn more than the workers, logic. Then you've got another black that's in charge of those bossmans. I can't remember the word.
Right.
They earn more. So it's not that all the blacks earn less. It's you're getting paid on your level of skills. It's logic. Now, in terms of a new secession-free country, do you realize how many people we have that are jobless? There must be literally a couple of million that are jobless.
Yeah, I agree.
They talk about 800 only white squatter camps in Pretoria. But that's only on the white side. Do we realize, I work with it a lot, so I'm more aware of it, I'm not 100% aware of it, or sure of the figures in any case, of the total financial, economic crisis with the coloureds. They were pushed out totally by the blacks, and we don't realize it. These people are literally dying of hunger. Where did the gangs on the Cape Flats come from? From exactly that. Because they had to go into crime to make money. In crime, they were caught, they went to Pollsmoor, and in Pollsmoor they started the gangs. They come out, and the gangs just expand and expand.
Right.
That's the sad thing. We've got literally millions of people that are jobless. And what I'm saying is that obviously the gangs must be eradicated completely. Either you change or you, whatever, gone. The point is, and I told this farmer that was with me today, manufacturing is what each and every country in the world needs. In fact, manufacturing is the reason why China now had such an incredible growth in their economy. In their case, because they don't have labor laws. They don't have minimum wage. If you want to work for $1 a day, just as an example, you're prepared to work for it, then you work for it. And that's the reason why China grew. As a matter of interest, exactly the same reason why South Korea, after the Second World War, grew so extremely big. Because no labor laws. Go and look at Korea, South Korea today. They're extremely wealthy, most of the people, not all of them obviously. That always happens. So in a new country, you will obviously have lots and lots of work opportunities. Because the parasites will be out. They won't be anymore. Secondly, you will have a country that's run by people that can run countries.
Right.
What is that? That's a businessman. Not a politician. A politician doesn't know how to run a country. A politician only knows how to sit and sleep in government. And how to try and look important on TV cameras. What is a country or the running of the economy of a country other than one of the biggest businesses in a country? It's a business, people. That's all it is. If you don't take sometimes hard but real business decisions, it will bite you. Why doesn't Africa grow? Because they don't understand business. Simple as that. And business is not like a lot of people think. Let's do one person in that somebody else loses. No. Genuine business is a win-win situation. Simple. Win-win. If it's not a win-win situation, it's not sustainable. And that includes from your lowest paid laborer. If that laborer is paid too little, you will find another job. You will go and find something else that you can make a living from. If it's not a win-win situation, it's not sustainable. If you make good business decisions, why is America growing so fantastic? Quite simply because Donald Trump understands business. It's as simple as that. South Africa, as we know it, is a mess, quite simply because the culture of the ANC government is not business. How did the ANC exist? They're very proud to say they're, 100 years old now. How did they exist? Only of one thing, handouts. And in fact, it wasn't just handouts, it was handouts in the millions and millions and millions. They don't know how to create money.
No,
they don't know how to make money in business. Look at the culture in South Africa now. What is in it for me? What do I get out of it? That is the culture. You can't run a business like that. You can't run a country like that. Simple. And that, to me, again, I've got nothing to say about it. But if I have any say in a new country's systems, that would be one of the things.
Yeah. Look, the adults in
Not
the room.
Not lazy people become politicians. Sorry.
The adults in the room have to take over the classroom again. That's what's actually going on in the new state.
Exactly. No, but I'm also talking about the whites. Scott, don't make a mistake.
Yeah.
Almost the laziest people that become, or people that don't make a success in their businesses, become politicians. I think that must be a prerequisite of becoming a so-called politician. First proof that you can run a company or start a company and run it successfully. Then you can also be in the running of a country.
Right. Now, I've got another question for you.
But not running a country, sorry?
I've got another question for you. They're still coming through. Now, I've read in recent days that there's a large area to the east of Gauteng, which is sort of like bordering Mozambique, which includes the Kruger National Park, and quite a large part west of the Kruger National Park, that is now being illegally claimed under land reformation, because they're saying that that was Boer land, and it basically still has title to the Boers, and they're now before the courts to try and claim, it's a huge area, to claim that area back, which would include the Kruger National Park. Are you aware of that?
I'm very much aware of it.
Can you tell us about
my feeling about that? Sorry?
Can you tell us about that while I just go and have a little potty check? So I'll leave you to take over the floor.
Yeah. No problem. No. In terms of that claim, and there are other claims as well, I totally 100% support any claim that any of our groups make, including on areas in Natal that they don't make, by the way. Because from an historical point of view, there's a lot of land that we can claim. And this is the whole point. In terms of South African law at the moment, black land that are claimed is claimed on historical claims. In terms of international law, historical claims is also one part of the law that you may use. But, unfortunately, the saying goes, possession is 99% of the law. And that is the problem that we have in South Africa at the moment. Because, take Natal as an example. We don't possess it. In figures, the Zulus have it. Not even the Indians in Durban. They've got small areas. I don't know, I didn't look, but I don't even think that the Indians is the majority in any of the voting districts. So the reality of all these claims is that in terms of South African law and what is going on at the moment, the claims in terms of historical claims, I totally support it. I personally don't believe that they will get it, quite simply because the ANC will not allow it.
I'm back.
But beautiful. But I totally support that they must put the claims in and they must do it. In fact, irritate the ANC, because the question will be, what is the reason that they did not give those claims to those white people? They will make themselves look stupid in the eyes of the international community. You see, the sad thing about the ANC is that the ANC existed financially, but also security-wise, because they hid in all the countries in the world, including England, in London, where they had their head office, the ANC. They existed on handouts. I said it earlier. The sad thing is that now, again, they just want everything in South Africa. And they've made laws for themselves. But the moment that you turn that around and you want to use it for yourself, like the land claims in South Africa, what is the argument going to be why you can't get it? And what they don't realize is that they existed because of the international community. What they're doing now is, now that they are running the country, now that they got what they wanted, because that's what they wanted, how do they deal with it? They're making a total mess of it. And they are showing those same countries, the Swedens, the Hollands, many of them, that supported them. They're showing them that they cannot run a country. Look at Ramaphosa's visit last year to America, where he blatantly lied.
Yeah.
You think the international community doesn't see this, doesn't understand what is happening here? Do you really believe that the Americans doesn't have enough information, and I specifically use the word information, in South Africa to make genuine decisions on what is happening here? Of course they know what's happening.
What about Hein Marx then?
Scott, that's a very difficult political question for me to answer to you. Quite simply, because Lana Marx had to say it. Simple.
Even though she knows it's BS.
She had to say it. No, of course, yeah. Remember one thing, the ambassador in a country is a VIP guest in that country. Publicly, she may not attack a country. She may only, on invitation or requested invitation, talk to the president of that country and call an attack that president. People that attack Lana Marx for what she said, and by the way, that Marx is not spelled the same as mine, M-A-R-K-S, which she is Jewish, and my M-A-R-X is German. Just to make that clear. She made that remark, and I don't know for a fact, how would I know? But she made that remark most probably on the suggestion or even on the command of the State Department.
Crazy.
Does it make sense? Just ask yourself the logical question. Does it make sense that the ambassador of America, not one of the smallest countries in the world, says something exactly 180 degrees opposite from what her direct boss says, Mike Pompeo? Doesn't make sense. But from an international political chess playing point of view, it makes 100% sense. 100%.
Yeah. Well, she certainly upset a lot of people in South Africa when she said what she said.
When I read it, I was immediately upset until I immediately thought, this is totally unacceptable. But I wonder, why did she do it? And then, I think it was a week or 2 weeks, I can't remember, after she said it, when Mike Pompeo said exactly the opposite in Ethiopia, I realized 100%. This was a setup.
Yeah. All right.
It's logic. I mean, otherwise, if it was totally wrong what she did, she would have been fired.
Yeah.
Or not fired, but she would have recalled. It's logic.
So it's like sort of brushing the hair of the ANC to keep them soothed. Now,
Exactly.
okay. Now, I think there are no more questions. Have I missed any questions, Jaka? I just want to say, Hein, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I hope that we have cleared up the areas that concerned you, and we will obviously leave this on the record so you can refer people to this video if they ask anything about what was said. This is your right of reply, and I appreciate the time that you've spent with us talking about that and the ULA and what it's actually all about. And if you do get into a situation where you'd like to have a debate with another organization or something like that, I would be very happy to offer the Loving Life platform to actually hold that debate. And I think it would make a very interesting thing. And I think the more that different groups can actually debate and understand each other, the more they can work together. So it's not a conflict thing. It's actually, hey, how can we actually work together? We'll make it a very positive thing.
Scott, no, I totally agree with you. Thank you for the opportunity in any case, but I totally agree with you. This is the whole point. We don't differ in terms of what we're doing with anybody. Quite simply because what we're doing, like I said a couple of times, it's a legal process. That's all we're doing. We're not a political party that has got a specific set of rules and how we see it compared to your political party that's different. That's logical that you must differ and fight for position. We're not in that position. We're simply there to give everybody a solution. We're not striving for positions or anything. We want freedom for our people. It's as simple as that. There's nothing else in it. So you made the offer. I accept it. Thank you very much. And hopefully we will have a discussion here every Friday with another person, but unfortunately, I know they don't want to go on public with these things. I mean, I can name them by the names. I tell you now, they will not accept the offer. They will not accept the offer, and we will now do it. We will send out letters to say, please come and discuss this. Come and, if your point is to attack the ULA's position, you're welcome. Please do it. Perhaps there's something that we haven't seen in 7 or 8 years, and our advocates and senior advocates haven't seen. So come and help us, Mike. I would appreciate it. The sad thing is, most people have got a complete tunnel vision.
Yeah, blinkers.
They only see what they want to see. They only see what they strive for in their own organizations, and they see each and every other organization as a threat. Either we fight together or we die alone. Simple.
Well, in these times, it's crazy not to work together.
Yeah, totally agree with you. That's why I said, let Ramaphosa come and discuss this here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he will, but we've got nothing to hide. There's international law, that's what we want to do. There's South African law, which you must abide to as the president of the country. Why? There's so many things that I can take him on from a legal point of view that he did wrong. I'm only talking about the secession thing. I'm not even talking about the other things. So what I'm saying is, the sad thing is that it would be fantastic. You know, when we started with this whole marketing campaign sometime last year, for just over 3 months, from Friday until Friday, 7 days a week, for 2 hours, I spent on WhatsApp groups answering questions. I'll do it again. I'll be on your program every night if there's an opening. You know, the sad thing is, they will not come and argue it. The Afrifoor will not come and argue it. The Solidariteits will not come and argue it. The political parties will not come and argue it.
Will you send those letters out, Hein? And you know, I'm very happy to offer Loving Life as the platform for those discussions, and that would make for very interesting and hopefully productive outcomes. Alrighty, I just want to say thank you so much for my moderators. You've done a fantastic job. I know we've had a couple of trolls in the side chat, and thank you for dealing with them. And they, you know, my moderators do a fantastic job in the side chat. It's such an important thing while I'm talking to people. I hope everybody who's watched has enjoyed the discussion I've had with Hein. I've certainly found it very, very informative and helped clarify a few things that I've been unsure of. Hein, once again, I just want to say thank you so much for making the time. I know you're a busy man, and I think we've now cleared the air and put the record straight, if I can put it that way. So yeah, let's see if we can move forward in the future and get some debates happening on the live stream. I think that'd be fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you again very much, Scott. I really appreciate the opportunity. To all the people that watched tonight, I hope I gave a bit more clarity if you had uncertainty in fields. But you had the opportunity to ask questions, but I'm sure there will be more opportunities. But most important is go and visit ulacongress.com, vote, and believe me, you've got to go into drop sites. There's a lot of information on that website. There's an incredible lot of information. So you can be busy for perhaps a month reading all the documents and everything on there. But thank you very much.
Well, I found the ulacongress.com website very interesting, and in particular that PDF that you got there, which runs to about 34 pages, I think it is, but mainly graphics and stuff like that, which really spells out what you do so well. Alrighty, I'm going to sign off on the live stream, everybody. Please take care. Please take precautions about the coronavirus. I hope you've all prepped. You saw the initial video I placed up when I started this live stream of Jan van Riebeck with a face mask on and saying, now I'm being blamed for this too. Anyway, with that, I'm going to shut down the live stream and just say to everybody, please